In the first book of the M2820 Teacher Training Series, I talk about a verse that I've known for years, but for the longest time I never applied it to teaching. Often this passage is linked to evangelism, but if you'll notice, it also relates to teaching. In this passage, Jesus gives us as teachers a clear and concise teaching goal. Look at what it says. Therefore, go into all the world and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and what? Teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Now look at that verse. Jesus says, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Now notice what it does not say. Jesus is not simply telling us to teach people what to obey or even how to obey. Rather, Jesus says, go and make disciples, teaching them to obey. So what is Jesus saying? He's saying that when we teach, we need to make life-altering transformation our primary teaching goal. It's not simply explaining what the passage says. Instead, it's explaining what the passage says so that we can help our class apply it to their lives. So when you teach, your goal is not simply information and explanation, but more importantly, transformation. Now this is so important because as teachers, we often tend to focus on explaining what the passage says, which of course we have to do. But what Jesus is saying here is that we can't stop there. The whole reason we explain the text and give that information is so that we can help our listeners take the next step and apply the lesson to their lives. It's making sure our lessons transformed how people think, how they act, and how they respond to life. Now, for most of us, fulfilling the Great Commission through our teaching ministry, it takes a bit of training. With Sunday school teacher training, though, we can become transformational teachers who teach both the head and the heart. However, without teacher training, most of us will become informational teachers who primarily educate the mind. Now, this isn't difficult to understand why this is the case. If you think about it, this is the teaching goal and methodology that the school system has modeled for us throughout most of our school years. By default, we just simply assume that teachers provide information like dates, facts, theories, principles, and more. So unless someone comes along and teaches us otherwise, when we become a Sunday school teacher, we likewise think that teachers provide things like biblical events, dates, background material, biblical history, New Testament customs, theology, and more. Now, all that information is important and has a part in our teaching, but as we use the principles and methods in this training series, we'll learn how to move beyond that information and transform lives. Jesus calls us to be transformational teachers and not simply informational teachers. It's a calling to transform the heart and not simply inform the mind. It's a calling that we need to understand and incorporate into our teaching methodology. Take a look at the M2820 Teacher Training Series and learn how to use simple, practical teaching methods that will help you fulfill the Great Commission through your own teaching ministry.